my name is Chafe. As you know, I've been doing Deckchecks at Premier level events for probably the last 2.5 years. I enjoy doing them, which is kind of sick and interesting. I'm sure you all have seen Deckchecks before. You've done Deckchecks as a Premier level event, like a GT or an ACT Open. I have at a... Okay, awesome. So you're familiar with that whole process? Yes. Okay. What I'm going to be focusing on today is deck checking constructed decks as opposed to human decks. Constructed decks, what you want to do, briefly we're going to talk about the sweep and how to sweep properly. I know that was discussed in the last demonstration, or the last seminar. But basically the way I like to do it is very, very simple. The decks are, the rows are lined up. If I'm doing a deck check, a table in a row over here, I'm going to stand ahead of the row of this row. One, it gives me enough image that I can look down this table for any possible problems on this row, while at the same time allowing me to keep an eye on this row. Especially if the table in question is toward the end of one of the rows. If it's in the middle of the row, circle the row. Circle the row. And that way, one, I can grab it from either side of the row, depending on when they finish. Obviously, the swoop, if you don't know what swoop means, swoop is actually defined in Urban Dictionary. I submitted it. It's now an official term for Judge, so you can go there and find out. But basically, what we want to do, as Lamppost said, is go in and we want to get them prior to, after the presentation, but prior to drawing the card. Sometimes that's not always possible, or there are fixes for that. But yeah, that's effectively what this switch is. Again, you don't want them to know you're going to be deck checked, so you want to kind of surprise them, you want to go to the last possible in a Premier level event, the new rule for deck checking is we want to deck check as quickly as possible for deck check on round one. That being said, it's now a two-man process as opposed to kind of a single-man process as it used to before. We'll go out and scatter and do that. The two-man process is one person goes to grab the decks, and while the person is going to grab the decks and go through that two-man process of getting their decks sorted away, they are, the other person is pulling the decks in question, deck list in question, as well as checking additional decks, checking deck lists for that solves multiple issues at the same time and really makes it more efficient. Okay, swoop is done. You have gone in, things you want to grab, you want to let them know, hey, I'm doing a deck check. I need you to take your decks, put it back into the box, put your sideboard in the box if it wasn't already there, and I like taking the entire deck box. The reason for that is one, potentially they might have extra cards in there, which is also a problem, extra tokens that could be an issue, a whole bunch of different things. So I like them getting their deck box. It also ensures the safety of the cards during transit. I've seen judges trip and fall and damage cards. It's bad, it's rare, but it does happen. So actually get the two deck boxes. I've prepared two decks to kind of show you my process of how to efficiently break down a deck, check for everything that you want to check for, and get the players playing as quickly as possible. In a Premier level event that is so fundamentally important, we've got 7 minutes to check a deck. Thankfully now it's a two-man process, so you only have to check one deck. But even still, the sooner we can get them back playing means the sooner the next round can start, the smaller a time extension we can do. Let me go to this. All right. First thing I like to do, usually in a constructed format, there's either two color decks, single color decks, or dual color decks, or triple color decks, or dual color decks with multicolored cards. And so I like to sort very, very quickly. This is a single color deck that I've prepared against a deck list. And typically, obviously, you'll have some kind of divider. usually. Most players have a divider dividing their sideboard. I set the sideboard aside. The reason I do that is simple. It's the easiest thing to check off of a deck list. I save it for last. It's very, very quick and easy. I don't worry about it unless there's a discrepancy on the list. I start with the deck face down. And the reason I do that is twofold. One, it allows me to scan the back of the sleeves. And two, at this point, I'm going to count the cards. One, to make sure there's not extra cards, because I have the list in front of me. I'll go, oh, they've registered 60. I'm going to count 60 as well as scanning the sleeves themselves for any potential problems. One of the things I didn't bring, and I wish I did, is sleeves with designs on them. Cards come in two types, one-way or two-way cards. Magic backs are one-way cards, meaning if you look at it and you turn it upside down, it is now a different way. So it only appears right or correct in one way. Whereas like a playing card, you can turn, a bicycle playing card, you can turn it 100 million times in 100 different ways, and it always appears the same. The back always appears the same, yes.
Speaking of the back, it's kind of great. It's unintentional.
Sure.
Dragon shields are pet peeve of mine.
Okay.
Because if you look at the sides,
yes,
it's really scuffed up and miscut. And I personally can find a pattern on the side and then track it and know exactly what the card is and where it is and find it every time. So,
and that's
one deal with that, considering there are so many players who use dragon shields.
Sure. That's a very good point. With regards to that, one, it all depends on the order in which you sleeve your cards. So that even though you may be able to track a pattern in the sleeves, it may not necessarily represent a pattern within the cards themselves. So that's important to recognize. If you do see a pattern, is it a pattern within the individual cards that they're sleeving? Because they may not sleeve their cards in a particular order. So that pattern may not translate to the cards themselves. Does that make sense? But yes, I hear what you mean. I'm a personal fan of Dragon Shields, but that's beside the point. Okay, so again, what I'm going to do is go through the deck. It allows me to look for sleeves, dirt on the sleeves, wear on the sleeves, indentations, markings, things of that nature that might be cause for a marked card situation. It also allows me to go through and count the sleeves, or count the cards, make sure that it totals the amount that goes through there. Now I do them in groups of 2. It's easier to count, saves time instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Because after you get past 10, you're taking time counting either mentally or verbally, and it's just easier to get off track. So I always do 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 20, 2, 4, 6, 8, 30. All the way through 60. It saves time and it's efficient. And that's ultimately what we want to do is save time. So we go through, we count, we look at the back of the sleeves, everything looks good, there's no intentional markings or dirt on the cards, and then turn the deck over. Now, one of the things the method I'm going to teach you for how to break down the deck is called culling. In a former line of work of mine as a magician, we use culling as a technique to sort a deck very, very quickly to either pull out a small number of cards, be it 10 to 12 cards for a particular effect, or to break down the cards by suit. And it's done highly efficiently and saves a lot of energy and a lot of time doing it. And the way it looks like is this. First sort that I always do is I cull all the lands. It's very, very simple. I go through, and this is culling, this process here. It's called culling, that's the technical term, and go through and remove all the lands. What this also allows me to do is check for clumping. Patterns within the process of, am I going every 2 cards and finding a land? Am I seeing natural instances of clumping of 2 to 3 lands in a row? What does that show me? It also allows me to not take the cards out and still keep them square in the deck. If I do notice a pattern, I can immediately push them back into the deck and then get a second point of view and reference on, hey, I think these cards are stacked, I think the lands are in a particular order, and I can get a second judge, my judge who's helping me, to go, hey, look, because I've now pushed them back into the deck, do you feel the same thing? And get a second perspective on it. So again, you're going to strip out the lands and set it down. Next thing I do is cards by color. In this case, this is a single color deck. However, I do have multicolored cards in them. In this case, Burning Tree Emissary. So I'm going to cull those separately, but I'm first going to do a sort by color. So this should be the rest of the deck minus 4 cards. And what I actually did there is called a bottom cull, but you can top cull them just the same. And then set those in a separate pile. Okay, so what you basically have here is 3 piles. This allows you to go through the cards individually. Lands are easiest. I do it, you can start with any pile, but I always start here. With lands, again, the next cull with lands is all the non-basic lands I pull out. So in this case, I am pulling out all of the non-basic lands, and then I have basic lands. This allows me to then go, and I'm done. I'm not placing 1 card at a time on a table. That takes a ton of time and a ton of energy doing that, and you can actually get tired at the end of 4 or 5 rounds of just putting cards down, trying to find that. It also is mentally taxing, going, where am I looking to find my cards to do that? This method, what it allows you to do is, and I'll show you with, and then of course you have your basic lands, and I'll show you with this, is what I recommend doing is have that deck list in front of you. And so after you have your piles, in this case, I know I've got 4 Burning Tree Emissaries, check it, great, it's done. Now what I do is I focus on the top card of the stack. In this case, Nylea, Goddess of the Hunt. I can go through, quickly check for it. Nylea's got 2, great, done. Voyaging Emissary, go through very quickly, cull them, bring them out, done. So on and so forth throughout the deck. This allows for a very efficient, it also looks for clumping and or stacking of the cards, while at the same time making you expend less energy and less time finding the cards themselves. Now, since we know there's only going to be 4 of in a deck unless it's Shadowborn Apostle or less, you know going into it that you can check very quickly, okay, I've got 4 ofs, great, boom, I'm going to be looking for 4 copies. The only thing you need to be cognizant of is, because this is a visual process, you want to check, just have a knowledge of what cards have multiple types of art. So for me, I look for Scavenging Ooze. Okay, I go Scavenging Ooze. I know it's got a couple of different types of art. I'm going to look for both, but in this case, he's using all of the same kind, and most players typically do. It just helps them recognize cards when they play. So that's what I look for. That's what I sort. And again, it decreases the amount of time and energy that you are spending sorting cards. To put out piles just takes tons and tons of time that the players could be playing, and that's ultimately what we want to do and get them back playing. Yeah, I don't think I should do that. Now, the reason I say sideboards are typically the easiest is because sideboards typically are in the order in which they put on there. Not always. Again, this is predominantly for standard, but sideboards typically are clumped together already. Players do this naturally. This is not something you have to worry about. It's super easy. You can go, hey, look, Recluse Spider, he's got it, awesome. He's got 4 copies, great. Go through, check, and you're done. And then that's the way I finish it. Check the box for any additional tokens, any additional cards, and you've pretty much accomplished everything you wanted to check. You've counted the deck to make sure it verifies the count on there. You've crossed off cards one at a time visually. You've checked for clumping and or patterns. You've checked for the quality of the sleeves, and you've also checked for any potential problems with the cards as far as damage or what have you. You've gotten a good look at both sides of each and every card very, very efficiently. Now with a more complex deck that has multiple colors, again, you're just going to be doing extra culls. So in this case, you take out everything that they have. In this case, it looks like their sideboard is here. First thing again that you're going to do, and I'm going to repeat this process for the new players or new judges that have come through. The first thing I do is turn the deck upside down and I count the deck. One, so we're counting it, verifying that the count given is the count there. Most players play 60, but occasionally you do have decks that register more than that. It also allows you to look for wear on the cards, patterns of wear, dirt, what have you, to check for problems of that kind. And again, I use the 246810, 246820, 246830, because after 10, if you count the cards individually, either in your head or out loud, it takes up too much extra time. Saying 18 versus 2, it doesn't seem like a lot, but over time, it can add up. So again, I go through, I check the cards in packs of 2, looking for any potential problems. It looks like these are new sleeves. I check for indentations on the sleeves, potential markings, warped corners, things of that nature. It gives you a good scan of the cards. It allows you to count the deck, and then you turn it over. You're gonna do a process called culling. I always cull land first, and just to go through your very quickly, I'll show you how quickly it is. This is called culling. You don't actually pull the cards out of the deck until you've completed the full search for all of the land, or all of whatever it is you're searching for. In this case, land. What this allows me to do, when I go through and do it this way, it allows me to check for clumping of the land, it allows me to check for patterns within that land. Is it every third card is the land? Do I see natural clumps? Do I see natural groupings of land, pockets of land, if you will? And if I do, again, I can push it back in, take it to my partner who I'm working with to accomplish this deck check, and go, do you see that same pattern? Okay, no you don't, great, or there's no problem, great, I pull it out, I set the land aside. Then I sort by color. In this case, the first color on top, and I always go with what's on top. Don't try and go, okay, well I'm gonna do this next and have to go look for it. Always start with what's on top. It's the easiest decision, it's what your brain can recognize. In this case, it's blue, so I'm gonna go through and pull all the blue cards. Again, same process. And again, set it aside. Oops, I got one stuck in there. Go through, in this case it's gold. I include all multicolored cards, gold bordered cards, and artifacts in the same clump. Typically, because multicolored cards, there's so few in a deck that it's easiest just to clump them into gold border cards. Same thing with artifacts. This is not a heavy artifact environment at this point. But again, whether it's legacy or otherwise, this is the sort that I do, and those are the clump patterns that I do it in. I've got a few white cards in here, so I'm gonna pull white cards out. Excellent. And the gold is what remains. So now what I do is I've got the deck list in front of me, I've got these piles here, and I can quickly go through very efficiently and go, Sphinx's Revelation. Okay, I see there's 4 in there. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, done. Detention Sphere, 1, 2, 3, 4, done. Supreme Verdict, again, just very quickly, very efficiently be able to break down and visually mark off the deck. Now, I don't put notation next to it that I've checked it off. Basically, I've always found that if you go through this process, you're going to hit every card, especially because you've already done a deck count. If the count matches and all of the cards are verified of their individual number, it's going to work. The math just works in that regard. Again, you've got a small packet of white cards. Again, it's very easy to break down. But again, I never use multiple piles. It's just a waste of energy and a waste of time. And this will really help you get it through very quickly and efficiently. So that's culling. It does take practice. For people with small hands, start with half the pack. Break the deck in half and then just pull half at a time. But I have very large hands, so I can do that. It does take practice, but I can typically get a full deck check in 3 minutes or less. And that's incredibly fast, and yet I'm still accomplishing everything that I need to get done. Again, I do it a lot. I enjoy deck checking, and I hope you guys come to enjoy deck checking because, well, it gets you off your feet for at least a part of the round, and that's amazing. But the deck checking part, people don't necessarily like. They like that they're off their feet, but not necessarily deck checking. All right, so what do you do after you've got the decks sorted out? Again, you keep them sorted. Do not shuffle the deck. Do not shuffle the deck. Put everything back into the box. If you found no problems, great. if you did find a problem, you're going to want to keep the deck list with you. You're going to want to take the 2 decks back to the table, take a problem deck list if there is one, and then return to the table. As mentioned previously, you're going to approach the table. You're going to ask for the person who you have the deck list and match slip for. Say, can you please step aside? I'd like to talk to you about your deck for a moment. Pull them aside, talk to them about their problem. Explain to them, try and get some information from them. Say, hey, how many of this particular card were you playing? Were you playing with other cards that, were you rushed when you made your deck list? That kind of thing, and just find out, was it intentional or was it not intentional? Most of the time it's not. At which point explain to them, hey, the penalty for a deck list error is a game loss. It's a penalty that we have to give because it is a serious offense. But we want to get you back playing, and if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to address them later for you. And get them back playing as quickly as possible. Come back to the table, explain to them what's going to happen. If it's the start of a round deck check as opposed to a mid-round deck check, start of the round, you're going to say to your opponent, your opponent has received a game loss for a deck list error. You're going to start game 2 and go through that process of explaining that he gets the option of deciding to play or draw. No sideboarding will be allowed, and allow them to get back to playing. Yes.
Speaking of sideboarding, does the calling process change at all if you do a mid-round, you swoop, and they've already sideboarded because you don't adjust?
Yes, that's a good question. If you do a mid-round deck check, I have found typically that because they've already sideboarded, and this is game 2 or game 3 potentially, depending on how fast they play, what will happen is you'll go through. I always start in a mid-round deck check with the sideboard, as opposed to doing the sideboard last for beginning of round. Reason for that is I know most people probably have sideboarded. If they haven't, it's easy. If they have, go through and go, okay, I've got 2 cards here, but it says 3. Okay, I'm going to remember that and go, okay, that's extra. And what I do is I break the sideboard down into 2 piles. What's been sideboarded, what hasn't been sideboarded, so that I can visually check it and go, okay, this is different from the list. These are on the list. Okay? And then when I go through the deck call, I can go, okay, I'm going through, wait a minute, that doesn't appear on the list. Oh, that's because it's a sideboard card, and that registers. And it's a very efficient system for doing that during a mid-round deck check. Again, you're not wasting time. You're not trying to go, where is this and where is that? Just get through the process of going, okay, he's got 2 cards registered, 3 in the deck. Okay, I know 1 sideboarded, boom, great, set it aside. It is currently legal, even though it doesn't match the thing, because I know there's been sideboarding that's been done. So again, I just go, hey, he's got 2, there's 3 there, that means there's 1 in the deck, great. I'll find it during my deck list, because when I'm focused on the main deck, I'm just focused on the part of the list that's the main deck, and I'll go, hey, wait a minute, there's 1 here that doesn't match the deck list. That must mean it's a sideboard card, and I have that as an immediate reference to do so. So again, just focus getting through the cards. Don't necessarily worry about where it's located in a mid-round, because you're going to find it. And so to stop that process and to stop that procedure, if you will, you're just delaying the amount of time to get those decks back to the players and get them playing again. So that's pretty much it. I wanted to focus on my technique. Again, I've been doing it for a couple of years now. I know it works. It's very, very quick. It saves a lot of motion, a lot of time, a lot of energy. Yeah, I mean, it's what I've taught to other judges, and I know it can work for you guys. Anyone have any questions or suggestions? I'm always open to feedback for faster ways of doing things. Yes? Absolutely, absolutely, and that's a very good point. It was brought up during the last seminar. When you go to give a penalty, again, you're taking your deck list, which you keep face towards you. You bring your match slip and pull them away from the table. So that way, if any cards are mentioned, any style types about your deck, you know, whether you're playing Esper or mid-range or what have you, that's not heard by your opponent. And there can't be any potential for advantage gained. Also, when you do write in the penalty on the back, keep card names out of it. Just don't, because eventually you're going to have to put that match slip back down, and you don't want the potential for your opponent to read it or see it, thereby giving an advantage away. Any other questions? Comments? All right, that's it. Thank you.